Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on my experience with the HP Spectre 16. Now, for those of you that missed my unboxing, this is not like the balance of Spectre 16s on the market. This is pretty much the highest spec version that you can get here in 2022. The two key enhancements, in my opinion: the display that you're looking at now is a 16-inch OLED with a UHD plus resolution that is 3840 by 2400. It's also 16 by 10, but of course all the Spectre 16s have a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, and I really appreciate that because it's an aspect ratio that is now gaining momentum once again. That used to be king years ago, but as content consumption became so relevant, it sort of slipped to the back. And of course, I do find that it delivers a really nice balance of course, productivity as well as content consumption. 400 nits of brightness, excellent color accuracy from what I've seen so far. The other element of this machine is its GPU. We do have a discrete GPU here, the NVIDIA RTX 3050. It is a Max-Q variant, so it's not a powerhouse, but it certainly adds, I think, what anyone would be happy to gain in a machine like this. Again, a two-in-one that isn't meant to be designed for gaming, but certainly it's complementary for content consumption and light gaming. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look and a listen to the display. I'll start with this sample, which of course is 4K. You'll notice letterboxing because this is, again, a 16 by 10 rather than 16 by 9 aspect ratio display. Make sure that the speakers are all the way up. And brightness is not at 100%. Now it is. And you can see it does look blown out, so I'm going to bring it back down. Now, from what I've seen so far, I'm really impressed with this panel. The fact that it's an OLED, well, you already know what to expect. Again, color accuracy, very deep, true black representation. It really is a stunner when compared to traditional IPS panels that we commonly find. It is 60 Hertz, so if you were looking for a higher refresh rate, you're not going to get it here, but I really don't think that your experience is going to suffer with this. Now, if we jump over to another sample, I'm going to go ahead and throw this up, which is just LG's demo for OLEDs, which is fitting. Granted, I'm pretty sure this is a Samsung panel. And while I haven't measured color accuracy, I think you already know that this is fairly solid, to say the least. So what I'll point out is that I think that this really does represent a very good balance, again, between display quality and audio quality, surprisingly. Now, I haven't tweaked the B&O speakers, but considering what I'm accustomed to with the Spectre lineup, which is never amazing audio, but okay audio is where I'd put it, the 15-inch lineup traditionally, because the 16-inch is a brand new edition, is usually, it gets loud, but it's fairly hollow. This, I think, is a little deeper, but of course, at the peak, you're still getting some blown out audio depending on the content. The previous video, I would say, is more of an example of that. Let's move away from content consumption and talk about overall performance. Now, I can't give you a fix on battery life right now. I'm simply not there yet. I've only spent roughly a day with the machine. I can tell you that to charge it up, roughly an hour and a half is what it's looking like using its charger. It also will take a charge over Type-C, so it's two Thunderbolt 4 ports. If you want to use a 65-watt charger there, you're good to go, which of course is a great thing. I can't tell you how many machines I've covered in the last year that had Thunderbolt or, well, yes, Thunderbolt ports. I was going to say Type-C as well, that were Intel-based that simply could not take a charge, no trickle charge. So I do appreciate that, and I think HP knew it had to incorporate that here because, after all, the Spectre lineup is about flexibility, having every feature possible, and really trying to please every customer that is going to entertain a machine like this. Really a premium one-size-fits-all. So with that said, let's talk about gaming. For those of you wondering, now I've done a little bit of gaming. I can't tell you that I've done anything too extensive, but what you will instantly see here is a reminder that this is a Max-Q variant. You are not working with a traditional, or I should say a max power 3050 or a 3050 Ti. And that's reflected in this score. Now, I've run it numerous times. Of course, we're set to maximum performance. You should know that this machine is based around NVIDIA's studio drivers, not the traditional game-ready drivers. And, to me, what I've played with so far in terms of gaming pretty much points me in the direction of at least concluding today, which is really premature, and I don't want anyone to run out and buy it or say, I'm going to forget about this as a result, is that you will get playable frame rates anywhere between 40 and 60 frames per second on modern titles. Depending on which title, you're going to have to jump between 720p and 1080p. Lighter titles, you're going to get away with full HD, which is really nice. But with heavier stuff like Battlefield 2042, for example, that I was testing out, it's going to be rough. Even in 720p, you're going to really have to, essentially take things down to some of the lowest settings. Now, you can see these estimated game performance marks that Time Spy throws out. Sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not great. But just to show Battlefield 5 at 1440 getting 40 plus frames, that's certainly playable. But if you drop down to 1080p Ultra, I really feel you're getting into more of what I think we expect to get from this sort of GPU. GTA, of course, I can install that, but I have yet to do so, granted. But you're seeing, again, totally playable, maybe not ideal. Again, this is not a gaming laptop, but the fact that it can play titles that are popular and do so in a decent form, in my opinion. I mean, anything above 40 is usable. If you're a competitive gamer, okay, that's not where you're going with this, but you get the picture. The 3050, I think, really stays in line with the previous discrete GPU options that HP has thrown into the Spectre lineup, so it makes perfect sense that it's here. Down the road, may we see something more powerful? I doubt it, because again, HP has gaming laptops geared towards filling that niche rather than two-in-ones like this. But I do think this takes on much of the two-in-one competition in a very strong way. Now, with that, out of the way, let's talk about the NVMe drive. For those of you that missed it, it is an Intel 1 terabyte Optane drive, or which is not a favorite of mine. It has advantages, it has disadvantages. The advantages being, quicker access to things you readily utilize, but otherwise, the performance isn't bad, but you certainly could, gain a little bit if you opt to go with a traditional NVMe drive. It's really a matter of personal preference. One thing that is important to remember, this does not support Gen 4 drives. So if you're saying to yourself, I'm going to go grab a Gen 4 drive and fix this, you're not going to. Remember, this is a Gen 3 drive. I haven't opened this up yet to see, what may or may not be. I may end up doing that just to see what performance is like with a higher end drive that I have here at my disposal. But that gives you an idea of the read-write performance of the included drive. Certainly not going to blow you away, but it's no slouch. And I don't want anyone to come away thinking that it's bad. It's just, we've seen this performance before. So while we're getting all this brand new hardware and new design language, the NVMe drive, unfortunately, isn't anything new. Beyond that, again, you can see some of the games I've installed and played already: Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, World War II, as well as Rust, besides the mention I made of Battlefield. And the machine, I know a lot of you are going to want to know how hot it gets. So predominantly the heat is right here. And this is really obvious why HP did this. Their cooling solution is away from where you're predominantly going to be resting your hands. They know most of the typing is going to happen here, so making this the area that's going to dissipate the majority of the heat means that when your hands are sitting on the deck, you're not going to feel much of that. Does the machine get hot? Does it get loud? Sure it does. You know, it's got an 11th gen quad-core processor and a discrete GPU, and it's still incredibly thin. Granted, it's dense at 4.5 pounds roughly, a little under that. It's right at around 4.5. So do I think that it's what I expect right now in terms of heat and noise for its weight class and what it's packing? Yes. So I'm not blown away in a bad or good way as of right now. I think it's what I expected. So if you're thinking it's, it was going to be a meltdown, doesn't seem that way. It seems like, the engineering department did find a good location for keeping this machine cool. And of course, in my follow-up to this video, I'll probably even run a benchmark or a game. Maybe I'll do a gaming demo so that you can actually hear how loud these fans get. Now, I haven't done any video rendering on this yet or photo editing, but I can already imagine what to expect. The processor is something I've dealt with before. The GPU, similarly, something I've dealt with before. And I think this is going to obviously be at the top of the line when it comes to HP Spectre lineup, which is what it's meant to be. Between its display and, of course, its CPU and GPU combo, you really have the best of the Spectre lineup in this machine. And I'm not disappointed. I don't think anyone will be. Granted, again, this is a very early look. This is the farthest thing from a long-term review. But I still think it's important for anyone who's wondering, will they be satisfied with this? While it's too early for me to say go out and buy it, so far I'm impressed, which is a good thing, because God knows when something is brand new, quite frankly unavailable. Again, I don't think there's any coverage of this particular build, again, the OLED discrete GPU combo on YouTube, other than myself. You do have to wonder what to expect. And so far, it looks good. Now, on battery life, I stated at the top of the video I didn't want to commit to anything because, quite frankly, it's too early. I've gone through like 3 cycles on the battery, and I can't give you real numbers. But what it's looking like, it might be somewhere around 6 hours of battery life is what I'm thinking. Now, granted, I have done nothing to really tweak, flex, and I'm not talking about playing games, so don't ask a silly question like that. I'm talking about regular use. That's with me keeping the screen at about 70% brightness. But, I haven't done a complete drain test on this thing yet, so take that with a very large grain of salt, which is a little bit ridiculous when I think about it. But so give me more time on the battery stuff. I know a lot of you want to know what battery life is going to be like with the OLED and discrete GPU on board. It's going to take more time. Realistically, this could end up being 4 to 5 hours. And who knows, on the flip side, I may be able to get 7 to 8 hours out of it. So that's why I don't want to commit to anything. The only thing I can tell you is it does charge up pretty quickly when using the included 135 watt power brick. Other than that, I've pretty much given you as much information as I possibly can here in just spending a single day with it. Another thing you'll want to know is that, overall, the I/O selection, for anyone that didn't see it already, I've mentioned you've got, of course, I'm going to close this up, and I'll get to inking another day, and remove the pen right there. But you've got a Thunderbolt 4 port, of course, the charging port. You have your micro SD card slot, which I love that they didn't do away with. This is where the majority of the I/O is, really clean all around. And you come to the other side, and that's where you just have an HDMI port and a Type A port. So, I mean, I think they really still have all their bases covered. This color, definitely a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, new hinge design. But then again, the whole machine is a new design. This whole rounded, yet still gem cut edge. This is a new look, and I happen to like it. It's going to be a matter of personal preference, clearly, but I think it's nice. And again, on the back of the machine, you can see the fans there through the grill. I will probably end up opening this so that you're able to see it. The fan assembly, it's interesting. I was mentioning with thermals, because I did already put my thermal camera up to this, does seem to, the fan array I was saying is on the right side. It is more towards the left, but what it's cooling, the majority of the hardware, I presume, is towards the right. And that's what I should have said earlier in the video, rather than that's where the cooling system was, because that is what is the literal case. So while the fans are on the left side of the deck closer to the WASD keys, the actual cooling that it's providing for the hotspot, essentially CPU, GPU location, seems to be on the right side of the body. But until I open it up, I'm not going to make any more predictions about that. That's just based on thermal imaging. So looks good, build quality, solid as expected with the Spectre. I don't think, I'm not noticing anything yet new with the pen, but too early for me to really comment on that. I'll get to that hopefully tomorrow. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. And please stay safe. Later.